is a thing about language models that trips people up the moment they try to build something real. A model forgets everything the instant a run ends. You can have a long, detailed conversation where it seems to understand your whole situation, and then the run finishes, and the next time you start it, it knows nothing. Blank slate, it does not remember you, your last task, or anything it figured out an hour ago. For a single chat, that is fine. For an agent that needs to do a job today, that builds on what it learned yesterday, that forgetting breaks everything. I run agents that need context across days, not just within one conversation, so I had to actually solve this. And the honest version of the solution is much less magical than the word memory suggests. Memory suggests. Let me clear up the biggest misconception first, because it shapes everything. Memory is not a feature of the model. The model does not have a place inside it where your facts live between runs. It cannot remember across runs any more than a calculator remembers the last sum you typed. So when people talk about giving an agent memory, what they actually mean, whether they realize it or not, is wiring up storage outside the model and feeding the right pieces of it back in at the start of each run. The model stays forgetful. You build the remembering around it. That reframing is the whole thing. Once you accept that memory is storage you manage yourself, the question becomes a normal engineering question. What do I store? Where and how do I feed it back in? The simplest version of this, and the one I actually use for a lot of agents, is a notes file. It is exactly as humble as it sounds. There is a file. At the start of a run, the agent reads that file, so the first thing it sees is the relevant context from before. At the end of a run, the agent writes back to that file, recording anything worth remembering for next time. That read at the start, right at the end, is the entire memory loop. The file is the memory. The model is just the thing that reads it and adds to it. There is no special memory system, no exotic database required for the basic version. A file the agent reads first and writes last gives an agent that effectively remembers across runs. Then I'm going to be honest about the trade-offs, because this is where the naive version goes wrong, and I went wrong here myself. The obvious instinct is to remember everything. Why throw anything away? Just keep appending. Every run, dump whatever happened into the notes file, and over time the agent accumulates a rich history of everything it has ever done. This sounds great and it is a mistake, for two reasons that compound. The first is cost. Everything in that notes file gets fed back into the model at the start of every run, and feeding text into a model costs money and takes time. A notes file that grows forever means every single run gets slower and more expensive than the last, paying to reread a mountain of mostly irrelevant history. The second reason is worse. Let me make that cost point fully concrete, because the math is what changes behavior. Everything in the notes file gets fed to the model at the start of every run, and the model charges by the amount of text it reads. So a notes file is not a free archive sitting on disk. It is a tax you pay on every single run, sized by how big the file has grown. A small curated file of the truly relevant facts is a tiny tax. A file that has accumulated every run's history for months is a large one, and crucially it grows without limit if you never prune it. So every run is more expensive than the last, forever. That is a genuinely bad shape for a cost to take, monotonically rising with no ceiling. The moment you accept that the notes file is read on every run, you stop wanting it big and you start treating its size as something to actively manage rather than let drift upward. The second reason is that remembering everything poisons the context with stale, wrong facts. This is the trap, and it is subtle. Say 3 weeks ago, the agent recorded a fact that was true then. Today, it is no longer true. The situation changed. But it is still sitting in the notes file, because you kept everything. So now, at the start of every run, the agent reads that old fact as if it were current and acts on it. The memory is not helping anymore. It is actively misleading. And the more you accumulate, the more old facts pile up contradicting newer ones. And the agent has no reliable way to know which version is current. A memory full of outdated truths is worse than no memory, because it gives confident wrong context instead of an honest blank slate. So the actual skill in agent memory is not storing things. Storing is trivial. The skill is curation, deciding what is worth remembering, and just as importantly, what to forget or update. The notes file has to be kept small and current. When something changes, the old version should be replaced, not appended next to the new one. When something stops being relevant, it should be removed. The memory should read like a tidy summary of what is true and important right now, not a transcript of everything that ever happened. I think of it like a person's working notes. You do not keep every scrap of paper forever. You keep a clean page of what matters, and you cross things out when they change. That crossing out, the forgetting, is the part people skip, and it is the part that makes memory actually useful. Let me name the specific failure that taught me all of this, because it makes the abstract concrete. I had an agent whose notes file I let grow freely, on the theory that more context could only help. For a while it was fine. Then one day it confidently acted on something that had been true weeks earlier and was no longer true, because that old fact was still sitting in its memory, read in fresh at the start of the run as if it were current. The agent was not broken. The model did exactly the right thing with the information it was given. The information was just wrong, and it was wrong because I had kept it past its expiry. That was the moment I understood that memory is not an archive you add to, it is a current picture you maintain. And maintaining a picture means changing it and removing from it, not only adding to it. An agent acting confidently on a stale fact is one of the most frustrating failures to debug, because everything is working correctly and the only problem is that you remembered something too long. Let me get concrete about how I keep it curated, because keep it small is easy to say and hard to do. One approach is to give the memory structure, so it is not a sprawling blob, but a set of defined slots, the current state of the thing I am working on, the few facts that matter and tend to stay relevant, open items that are not yet done. When memory has a shape, updating it means replacing the value in a slot rather than tacking new text onto the end, and replacement is exactly what keeps stale facts from accumulating. Another approach is to periodically have the agent summarize and compress its own notes, taking a sprawling history and boiling it down to what still matters, then throwing the rest away. Both approaches fight the same enemy, which is unbounded growth, and both accept the same truth, which is that good memory is mostly good forgetting. There is a deeper tension here worth naming. More remembered context genuinely does make an agent more capable, up to a point. An agent that knows the relevant history of a task does better than one starting code every time. So you do want memory, but every piece you remember costs you something on every future run and risks going stale, so memory is a thing you spend deliberately, not hoard. The question for every fact is not can I remember this, it is will remembering this help future runs more than it costs them. Most facts fail that test. The few that pass are the ones worth keeping and keeping current. I should mention the heavier version of memory too, because there is a point where a notes file stops being enough and people ask about it. If an agent needs to remember a genuinely large amount, more than you would ever want to feed in all at once, the answer is not a bigger notes file. It is to store everything in a searchable form and pull back only the few pieces relevant to the current task. Instead of reading all of memory every run, the agent looks up just the bits that matter for what it is doing right now and feeds only those in. That is a real and useful technique for large memory, and it is worth knowing exists. But I want to be honest that most agents do not need it. For the great majority of what I build, a small curated notes file read at the start is completely sufficient, and reaching for the heavy searchable version before you actually need it is just complexity you will have to maintain. Start simple and only graduate to the searchable approach when the simple file genuinely cannot hold what you need. The reason I raise it is that people often jump straight to the complicated memory system because it sounds more serious, and then they have a heavy thing to maintain for an agent that needed a text file. The size of your memory should match the size of your actual need, no bigger. A notes file for small structured memory. A searchable store only when memory is genuinely large. And in both cases, the same discipline applies. Keep what is current, drop what is stale, and treat remembered context as a deliberate cost rather than a free hoard. I want to connect this back to a pattern I keep landing on across everything I build, because it is the same lesson again. The model is the easy part. It comes ready, it is genuinely capable, and you do not build it. What you build is the careful system around it. And here that system is disciplined note-taking. Read the right context in at the start. Do the work, write back only what genuinely matters, and update or remove what no longer holds. That loop, done with discipline, gives an agent something that behaves like memory across days and weeks. Done without discipline, by just remembering everything forever, it gives you a slow, expensive agent confidently acting on facts that stopped being true weeks ago. So if you are building an agent that needs to remember across runs, here is the honest shape of it. Memory is storage you wire up, not a thing the model has. The simplest working version is a file read at the start and written at the end. The hard part is not storing, it is curating, keeping that memory small, current, and free of stale facts. Give it structure so updates replace rather than accumulate, and treat every remembered fact as a cost you are choosing to pay on every future run, so only keep the ones that earn it. Do that and your agent carries forward exactly what it needs, and nothing that misleads it. Skip the curation and your agent slowly drowns in its own outdated history. The unglamorous truth is that agent memory is just disciplined note-taking built around a forgetful model. There is no magic remembering inside the model, and there does not need to be. There is a file, a habit of reading it first and updating it last, and the discipline to forget what no longer matters. That is the whole thing, and it is enough. So the next time you hear someone talk about giving an AI long-term memory, as if it were a magical property of the model, you will know what is actually under the hood. It is storage you wired up, a habit of reading it in and writing it out, and the discipline to keep it current and small. The model is still as forgetful as ever. The remembering is yours to build and yours to curate, and the curating is the whole skill. If you like AI explain the way it actually works, once you have to build the parts the model does not give you, real systems with honest trade-offs, that is what I do here. So subscribe and follow along. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.